This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it's about 6:30. Let's go ahead and get started. We need to determine the presence of the quorum. We do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all here today. Need to review the agenda. Yes, sir. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, sorry, 6. You can't expect me to count. I would like to add one item on the agenda. Under 6 other items, we do have a preliminary report on the boundary adjustment research that's being done, so we would like to add that to the agenda under number 6. Is there anything else that anybody would like to change or add?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we need to review the minutes from February 7th. Let's see, Nathan, you weren't here that day.
I'll abstain from voting.
Okay. Does anyone see any corrections or changes that need to be made? Okay. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we have 2 cases plus the other items that we mentioned. As always, we will read the case. Ligon will address anything he wants to add. The applicant will have a chance to address the Planning Commission. Following that, any public comment would be allowed for. All right, case number SU-03-24-01. Ms. Patricia Kurowski, President of the Board of Directors for the Homeless Animals Rescue Team Incorporated, abbreviated HART, has applied for a special use permit to construct and operate an animal rescue kennel on an A1 agriculture zoned lot. In the A1 zoning district, a kennel is allowed by SUP. The subject lot is 35 acres and contains 2 existing dwellings. The proposed kennel structure would not exceed 10,000 square feet of area under roof and house or shelter no more than 50 dogs and 25 cats at any given time. If approved, a temporary kennel would be established utilizing the lot's existing structures or potentially temporary structures in accordance with the Uniform Statewide Building Code. In addition, the SUP would run with the applicant and therefore be non-transferable or assignable. The subject property contains 2 postal addresses, 18 and 310 Old Sparks Road, Culpeper, Virginia, and is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 43-5. Okay, Ligon, anything to add there?
Sure.
I think we're going to know everything about this kennel before we come to the next meeting. And I know it's been a long adventure, and I think the big thing from the first application is obviously we have a pretty significant redesign. You see the letter from the engineer. It looks like Hart has obviously reached out with some pretty sophisticated folks who deal in this type of design and mitigation of noise. So I, credit them for really going the extra to try to answer those concerns. And you see the letter. I've read it. Otherwise, if there are any questions about the conditions, I do have that in Word, so we can go through and edit it tonight, but I don't know if we're going to do that, but I just said, any other questions, but other than that, that's about all I have.
Okay, anyone have a question to address to Ligon? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Ligon, I think we probably need to clarify this case description to show that Hart is the applicant. You can read it as if the president is and she's not. And I've got a question just for my edification. What does under roof mean? Is that under the drip line, the outside
Yeah,
walls, the inside walls?
That's just several different ways people describe it. I sort of like that term because anything that hangs under that roof, which kind of, some people use finished square footage. If you're finished, you're going to have a roof over you. So I don't know if I'm giving a good answer, but under roof is just finished square feet.
Okay, so that's a lot smaller than under the drip line of the roof. then.
Yeah, I wish that would be
Okay,
correct.
thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I brought this up a couple times, actually. Under number 2, we talked about having a total number of 50 in the permanent shelter and 15 in the temporary. And I think somewhere in there, we need to go ahead and list it as a total of 50 and not, that could be construed as 65 total. I mentioned that one or two other times, and I still see it says the same thing.
All right, so right here on number 2, what would you like to, what do you think would clear this up?
I think it's just somewhere in there, it needs to say a total, where it says a total number of dogs, period, should be 50, and not 50 in the permanent kennel, because it says the total number of sheltered in the permanent kennel shall not exceed 50. And then you go down, and it says in the temporary kennel should not exceed 15. So are we giving them a total of 65 or a total of 50?
No, they're two separate. I mean, once the permanent kennel is online, the temporary kennel just goes away.
All right, we need to
Well,
say that
I
then.
still think that probably somewhere in there, we should probably put a total number of dogs on the premises would be 50. Because they could at some point,
Yeah, there could be,
have both of them operating at the same time
Right,
for
could be
whatever
an
reason,
overlap,
and, I just think it should say a total number of 50.
So, Mr. Chairman, how about we say during the temporary facility, during? The total number of dogs sheltered during the temporary kennel facility shall not exceed 15.
But
uh,
excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess the question that Mike is asking, if I'm understanding what he's saying, if you have a temporary shelter and you have a permanent shelter, and you fill your permanent shelter up with 15, and you're with 50, and your temporary shelter is still there, you could possibly put 15 in there, and you'd have 65. Is that what you're saying, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's trying to address any possible overlap there. So, where you say the total number of dogs sheltered in the temporary kennel shall not exceed 15, et cetera, maybe another sentence in there, that the under no circumstances are the total number of dogs in both facilities to exceed 50.
How this?
Because potentially there could be a time overlap there.
Would something like that work?
Total number of
Begins operations, what do you think, Hen?
Maybe, because my understanding is temporary kennel might still be used for cats,
Yeah.
so maybe the temporary kennel facility shall not house dogs once the permanent facility's in operation. I don't know.
Just limit no more than 50 dogs total at any given time. Period, and that way it covers it all.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
It could be a really easy sentence, you know, I mean, we don't have to make it really difficult.
I'll just put a note here, and Hannon can words, I'm going to send this to Hannon since I'm, won't be here. I'll just say, just put a note here. The total, I'll just put a little note. Both permanent and temp kennel facilities shall not house more than 50 dogs at any, 50 dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, and Hannon can,
That should be adequate, yeah.
I will just let him, we can kind of, I'll just put a note here, and I'll put that in red. And we can maybe just go, won't do it now, but we'll go back and make that statement where this is the,
Just
Just to clarify.
to avoid confusion, the sentence, the temporary kennel facility shall not house dogs, it's the last bold sentence.
right.
Do we still need that one, or are we causing more confusion?
Right, yeah.
All right, cool.
Okay, Jim, you said you had
I do. The condition one is the SUP shall run with the applicant being Hart. And except for SPEs, most corporations' life shall be perpetual. And my question is, on number 11 and 12, are we not granting the ability to constantly be changing the terms and conditions of the SUP?
Condition 11 and 12?
Yeah, or primary 11. I'd probably defer to Hannon on that, is whether or not that's, I don't think we can make this that open-ended.
too open-ended, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing I'd like to see is where, I think zoning administrators first used at the first sentence of item 11, we need to put or her or his designee.
And that should probably be in both 11 and 12 if you want to do that.
Yeah. And 14. Now, that probably would just stay the zoning administrator.
Right. Okay. Any other question or comment at this time?
So is that saying the zoning administrator would have a designee? Is that who's going to designate?
I mean, it could be the zoning
The other
administrator, or zoning administrator should say, be the county administrator, or, you know, it could be the county attorney, it's some official capacity, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, any other question or comment at this time?
To the extent,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith, you're asking my opinion on 11, I think we've got the same sort of issues that we talked about last time, which is worry about vagueness and discretion and subjectivity with it. And then the actual enforcement of it's gonna be difficult. It seems, and this is, now I'm venturing into opinion, but if you're comfortable with the design of the place and what its mitigation efforts are gonna be, that would be a whole lot better than trying to create a one-paragraph condition, essentially a de facto noise ordinance for this one place. So I'm not entirely comfortable with it. I mean, it's doable, we can continue to work it, but I think it's inviting a lot of problems and disagreement and even court, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's just one of these situations, this was sort of done to, for the neighbors, in trying to create some sort of, kind of like Hannah said, a de facto noise ordinance to a degree. If there is something that's unreasonable, I don't think that's going to be the case. Then if a zoning administrator or, you know, designee, whoever it may be, goes out there and, yep, they're barking all day long, and I could, you know, then we need to change these conditions or whatnot. So that was, and, you know, an administrative decision is appealable to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that was sort of my idea. I don't disagree. It's not perfect, and it's, but again, it was just trying to codify some of the neighbors' concern about if this is for some reason rogue, for better, you know, back to a better word, which again, I don't have any doubt that they'll be good neighbors, and if someone calls, they will do whatever it takes, but I guess, you know, trust but verify, right?
Yeah, and that abatement or restriction of noise is specifically one of the things that are mentioned that Board of Supervisors may impose in 14-4-3. So, yes, sir.
I ask the attorney a question. So if Madison County does not have a noise ordinance, legally, how do you enforce it?
Well, I mean, an SUP and its conditions turn into sort of a ordinance for this particular piece of property, even if it's not otherwise found in your county code.
So I guess my question is, if I go out, if I was living and I go out and the dogs are barking or whatever, and I come back and say, they're making too much noise, they're barking too much, now we're ready to go to court. What determined that how I determined that they're barking too much?
You took notes about it, you recorded it. I suppose you'd just be trying to build the case of why this is excessive and would be violative of the SUP condition.
Yeah, and it is defined within the condition. Unabated or continuous barking more than 10 minutes.
Different over they'll alert us and then we'll make changes to, make it stop. We're gonna say, no, we're not gonna make changes and let people argue.
That's not what I'm assuming, ma'am, that's not what I'm asking.
Well, so there's steps before you get to the bill court.
I'm asking how we can defend it legally.
Yeah, since it is very open-ended, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm personally just in favor of removing 11 altogether from the conditions. I
Yeah.
don't think we're, you know, I don't know if
Yeah, I mean, actually 12 would cover it.
that's pretty much what I'm thinking. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think the zoning administrator or their designee is necessarily trained in dispute resolution like you would say, you know, a police officer, somebody would go to in a domestic
Mhm.
situation. Two kind of covers, it does give some oversight. And then, you know, put some work towards the design of it, make sure, you know, people are as comfortable as they can be with that. That is my opinion.
Okay, any other suggestion along those lines? something to consider, okay. Any other comments or questions for Ligon? All right, if the applicant would like to address any of these questions or answer any questions, if you would. Ms. Karowski, if you would like to answer any questions for us or address us, make sure the microphone is on. And as always, identify yourself and so forth. Thank you. No. No.
Okay, no? Yeah, okay. I'm Patricia Karowski, the president of the Board of Directors for Hart. So we did present a redesign of the kennel the last meeting, and then we worked with our consultants and stepped through. They have some very grandiose ideas how to make a beautiful shelter that'll be about $3 million and appropriate for, downtown DC maybe. But what we did do is go through and find out what is the biggest bang for our buck on how we can redesign the kennel to make it not noisy. So the courtyard design, and he did calculate it. So he's being very conservative on how he's calculating it. The noise escaping the thing is not zero. I think I may have overstated it. You won't hear the dogs, but it'll be, he said even at the peak would sound like a single dog at the edge of the property. And he didn't even have the full size of the property. He was saying 400 feet from the kennel, but it's 35 acres. So I think it'll be less than that. And frankly, I've never been outside in Madison County and not heard a dog barking. So it'll be something similar to what you're already hearing. Definitely a much better design than we originally had, and I'm much happier with it. So, so I don't know what else to say. I think we've already gone through a lot of these things. The temporary kennel will be noisier, but it will only be 15 dogs. And so in this document from our consultant it's all about behavior and by keeping them in small groupings. So if we find the dogs are loud, we would only put maybe 5 dogs at a time of the 15 if it was a problem. So it's something you could regulate with just behavior modification of the dogs. So, and I think we've addressed every issue that people brought up about safety of dogs getting free. It'll be a completely enclosed building. We will have, I don't think we put it in here, but there will be fencing around the entire facility to, so the vans driving, it would have to go through a gate, close the gate, and then go into a closed building to get to the dogs. So there's double barriers for any dogs to ever get free. So it's, even digging out of, it's just not possible. All the outside runs will be cement, so it's not like they can dig out. They'll all have roofs on them too, so dogs can't climb out. So it'll be like maximum security doggy prison, but with the beautiful, access to the sunshine. So, and with the indoor play areas, we should be able to provide a very fulfilling enriching environment for the dogs. And we've been working with Madison County Shelter. We've already helped with a couple of dog placements. Forgot where I was going now. Anyway, so you guys have any questions for me?
So you just mentioned twice, 15 dogs.
In the temporary kennel?
So all that you were talking about was the temporary kennel and
No.
not to permanent? Because you kept mentioning 15 dogs and not 50. So did I not hear you right, or?
I'm sorry, so I was jumping to another subject of the temporary kennel. So the permanent kennel will be 50 dogs. We're not going to tear down the temporary kennel. We'll probably repurpose it for storage or possibly cats. If we find that there's a major feral cat population here that needs a place to go, we would possibly just come back for a modification and say, hey, we'd like to have a colony in that building, because it's like screaming to house some sort of animals. And they're quiet. It's not like they're going to affect the community. I've never been a proponent of catch and release kitties. I would prefer provide them a nice place to stay that's safe, where they're not out eating songbirds and whatever. So, but we would not use those for dogs. Or if we did, it might be, maybe a temporary, when the dog comes in, when people are coming to get it, put them in a run inside there. We're hoping to have some flexibility, as long as the number doesn't exceed 50 once we have the permanent kennel in. So we will abide by the what do you call it, we are intending it to be operated. We don't intend to ever have more than 50 dogs. We'll have no more than 15 until we build the permanent kennel. The temporary kennel will be noisier than the permanent kennel because we just can't build in that short a period a better facility. But like I said, we will modify the dog's behavior by controlling, how many dogs are out.
So you also mentioned a fact that I've been thinking about a lot, and that was, and once again, I'm in favor of this. So, but you mentioned a little while ago that you're on 35 acres. You're on 35 acres, but you're only building on the first 100 feet off of Old Sparks Road. You really are just facilitating 3 or 4 acres, and with a remainder of 30 acres of woods that would baffle a lot of this noise. Have you considered moving the facility into the woods where it would be baffled better and not just right off of Old Sparks to unifyly using 35 acres? Because you could do what you're saying on 5 acres.
Yeah, but as much as I'd like to say, yeah, we'll put it in the woods and you won't hear it, our experts assure me that the woods don't baffle the noise. So they'll hide it so you don't see it, but.
It's a big chance though, right?
But the woods don't really, the trees don't stop the noise. It's the vibration of the sound, so it's air pressure, and trees don't really baffle it. So the building around it will baffle it. The roof, we're gonna have overhang on the roof. The noise of a dog, it's pressure and it goes out and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So as it hits the wall, and the outer bands are lesser and lesser. So by blocking it with a solid building, only the lower level noise will make it out over the wall. So the trees, he said, they recommend growing trees just out of sight, out of mind, but it really doesn't do anything for the sound. We're putting a lot of money into the building to design it so that the noise doesn't leave the kennel, or very little of it does. And there's a lot of wonderful materials you can use for like the walls on the inside of the courtyard, so the sound doesn't bounce off. If you go into the Madison County shelter, it's all cement block, so the noise is just, with 2 dogs, it's deafening. But this would have material that's appropriate for it, and and then, so putting it in the woods, it makes it more expensive, and it really doesn't. And the other thing is, our biggest complaint was Mr. Yagi, who lives behind us. The main house is up on a hill. We're building it down the hill from the main house, and his house is down the hill from there. So it's probably the best location so that the sound doesn't travel down to his property. Now, I know there's other neighbors that are talking about it on the other side of the road, but I really think that we're banking on the building itself doing all the noise baffling, and, we may build trees, plant trees around it so it's not in sight, but the plan is to make it look like a barn structure. So I think that would be a positive for the neighborhood to see a nice, well-kept barn. The buildings on the property all match nicely. We have a family going to be living on site, maintaining the property to make sure it's all nicely mowed and everything. So I don't know what else we could do to be good neighbors here. We will not have a sign saying what we are. It'll just be a property that people drive by and see a big barn.
But you'll have people on site
Yes.
constantly?
So we have a lady living in the primary house, and then a family living in the old farmhouse who've done some renovations, new floors and new windows, and so that and they'll live there. In exchange, they'll be maintaining the property, cutting the grass, fixing the fences, that kind of thing. And as a backup to Mary Lou, who's right over here, right here. So she's the one who'll be living on site, and she's been working with Hart for 25 years. So we have a lot of faith in her, and And, she loves the dogs and should be very responsive.
Pete, did you have a question?
I got a question and a comment.
Okay?
My question is, I just heard you say 50 dogs and 25 cats. So the SUP is for 50 dogs and 25 cats. And then you said, well, we're gonna refurbish the building probably to where we could house more cats. So that's more than 25, the way I add up.
Yeah. So what I said was, we're not gonna tear it down. It's a nice farm, we're not gonna tear it down. And if we found that there was a feral cat problem, we would go for an amendment to our SUP to allow more cats if we thought that was the right thing to do. Right now, honestly, I don't know if we're gonna have any cats there. We might have an occasional litter that we don't have a foster for, but really, the plan is for it to be used for the 50 dogs and not the cats. I wanna be forward-looking, I always plan for the future, so.
The comment I got is, I've owned hunting dogs all my life, packs of hunting dogs. And I've run them all over the country everywhere, and they say trees doesn't do any good. Well, my hunting dogs can go into the mountain and the trees, and I can't hear them. As soon as they come out in the open, guess what? I can hear my hunting dogs fine. So the fact that I'm having trouble believing that dogs in the trees the trees don't help any. I can't hear my hunting dogs when I'm in the woods, but I can hear them in the open field.
Are there hills? I mean, if they're down-
Absolutely, hills, valleys,
Well, that's,
everything.
so, I was assured by the expert, and he is an expert, he's been doing this for many, many years, and also one of our sister rescues from Friends of Homeless Animals have a beautiful facility. It's back in the woods, and the reports we got back were everybody can hear the dogs, trees or no trees, so. That's the experience I've had on that. And that's why we decided to hire the consultants to help us build a better design. And the original design we had was a very antiquated design, probably similar to what FOHA has.
Okay, any other question? I have a couple of quick questions. I looked at that fairly impressive handout we had for the abatement materials that were being recommended. At the site plan level, I guess we might verify that that's happening, but can you give us some assurance now that those are the materials that you actually plan to use in the construction of the building?
It's too soon to tell. Until we get approval to build, we're not gonna spend, $10,000 to have them design a kennel for us. So, our intentions are to use what we can afford, so, we'll be judicious on what we do, and we'll get the best bang for our buck. So, he assured me that, so I don't think that the material is gonna be a big problem. So our plan is to use something that's not, the difference between a good material and a bad material is the good material is impervious to water, and the bad one will get moldy and stuff. So it's not in our interest to use the bad material. So our intention is to use these. We just don't know what it costs. We need our architect to design it in. And so we're going to keep these consultants through the design process, so we will make the best decisions we can. And I think that we have to get that approved when we do the building permit. So I think there's opportunity to weigh in on that as we design the building. It's just too early. And
Well, yeah, the
it was
problem,
like
yeah.
overnight that he redesigned it with the courtyard thing. So, that was a huge favor to me that he did that.
And that leaves us with the problem of having to make a decision on the SUP without any firm assurance that those will be the noise mitigation factors being used, so.
Yeah, I just don't know how practical, and I don't even understand what they are, so we'd have to. But like I said, there'll be an opportunity to weigh in on those details with the building permit, so. They'll only approve what they'll approve, right? So, and my understanding is that if it's not acceptable, then they will not approve the building permit, and then we can't build, so.
Well, that kind of leads me to my second question. Assuming that those factors are considered in the building permit application, I'm not sure, we don't have our building inspector here, I don't think, today, do we? No. I'm not sure whether those are the kinds of things that he has to deal with when he does his inspections. You know, I know he deals with structural matters, electrical matters, plumbing matters, things like that, but I'm not sure that's part of the building code as far as inspecting a building. So that leaves us, again, with the situation of, as the building progresses, how are we going to be assured that these mitigation features are going to be in the building?
So the vast majority of the fancy stuff that he has in here is for the internal part of the building that's not really impacting the external
Right.
sound. So he made a point to assess the courtyard where there's building all the way around it and the overhang. And that's what he was basing, and the fact that we would have opaque fencing. I guarantee you, there will be opaque barriers between all the dogs, so they won't see each other. We'll break them, we're gonna try to break them up in groups of maybe 7 or 8 per group. So even if they're next to each other, there'll be a solid wall between them. So that much I can assure you is the plan. All those fancy things, a lot of that was inside the building, so it's not deafening for our employees. But honestly, we've agreed to put an exterior hallway down the kennel run, so the employees can walk outside of where the kennels are in the building, but in an exterior hallway, so that it's not deafening for them. So it's all about the quality of life for the dogs, and we'll do the best we can with the money we have. And the nice thing is, you know, if it's a problem, we can always modify the building materials and add sound abatement to make it a better place.
Okay, kind of zeroing in on, I think you may have answered my question without either one of us realizing it. Except for that central courtyard, are the kennels themselves going to be open to the outside?
No, just inside the courtyard, so.
So the only time dogs would be literally outside of the interior of the building is when they're in that courtyard.
Right, exactly. Now,
So that's the only real exterior sound
Right.
production that we're going to be looking at.
so we'll probably
Okay.
have big fenced areas where
Yeah.
somebody might take 2 dogs out to run in the field, but that's, and those aren't the sound problems. When there's somebody out there with them, that's not when.
So the handout from the consultant, all those sound absorbing materials and so forth, that's strictly internal in the building.
Yeah, almost all of that was internal. The only thing is the external part of the kennel wall. So I'm assuming we're going to put as good a material as we can to keep the noise down, but that's really, the rest of it is all, so it's not deafening for the dogs and the employees, so.
And you're talking about a surrounding fence around the building itself
Yeah,
as a sound break also?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
so we do plan to, and just, also because, just to make sure we don't have a jailbreak, somebody opens a door, we want to make sure there's a fence to keep them from getting out.
So essentially, all those expensive sound mitigation materials don't really affect the decision we have to make because it's
No,
not going to
that's
affect the exterior sound.
Yeah, I think they're still trying to earn our business, to design the whole kennel. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, we design inside too, and I was like,
Yep.
that's good, but.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess the question I'm asking you, then, this document that we have is kind of irrelevant
For
to
our-
what we're gonna do.
for our
because there's
decision.
no assurance that this document's gonna be followed.
Plus, it's only internal sound mitigation.
No, not only, but the front page is where he calculates what the sound escape, and based on the courtyard design with the dogs not being able to see each other. So that's where he calculated that. All the rest of that is, so if you rip off page 1, that's what's relevant to you. All the rest, I hope they're not listening, but it's them trying to sell their services to us on how beautiful they can design the inside of our building.
It's the frosting
But
on the cake.
The front, so really what we asked for is this first page, and that's where he's saying that on the edge of the property with this design, it shouldn't sound more than like a single dog, barking in the neighborhood. And that's, using a pretty high dB level of sound within.
Yeah, we've encountered this kind of thing before with a previous event venue, and when they actually tested the sound produced at the border of the property, it was background sound level.
Yeah.
So,
He's saying 35 dB, which is what he
Yeah.
was talking about here, is like a conversation. It's not really, not a lot of noise.
Yeah, and of course, that's not going to satisfy everybody because most humans can hear like 2 or 3 decibels. So,
He said 2 or 3 is a whisper, he said, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
So I know that a generating substation, an electrical substation is 50 dBs at the property line, and that's in the city with people all around.
Okay. Any other questions or comments at this time?
But as for all these internal, it is in our best interest to make it as soundproof as we can. So our plan is to use as many of these as we can, so.
So I'm just happy to look on here real quick, and it says the typical decibel range of a dog bark is between 60 and 110. So you're going to take that 60 to 110 and cut it down to 35.
And define what a dog bark, I mean, where, like,
This is Adams County Animal Shelter. The typical decibel range of a dog bark is between 60 dB and 110 dB. The loudest recorded bark at 113. Although the majority dog barks fall between 80.
okay, yeah, so I just know what the calculations, he said he would be surprised if it was, you know, I didn't want to talk dBs, there's no sound ordinance in the county, so I hate to put some levels out there, but he said he thinks at the worst, it'd be maybe 80 dBs in the run, and about half of that would make it out, and then it would dissipate to the property line, so 80, so about 40 or 45 outside, you know. And he didn't do any fancy calculations, so having an overhang, it's, I think, 5 or 7 foot overhang is the design. That'll help trap some of that noise too. So I guess if a dog's barking in your face, that's what that sound is, but, you know, if a dog's barking in my face across the room, are you hearing it as loud as I'm hearing it in my face? So they're measuring it at the dog's face, not when it's, you know, outside of the building.
Well, if it's reduced to 35 decibels, that's pretty significant because it's, if I remember correctly, it's an exponential figure for decibels rather than just geometric.
Yeah.
So, you know, plus once it escapes, then you've got the inverse square law for any sound propagation as well, so.
And I asked about the wind because that was brought up at the last one. And he said they're not particles, they're pressure. It is, the wind would actually dissipate it because it disrupts the pressure.
Pressure wave.
So it actually helps to mitigate the sound, not make it worse.
Okay. Any other question, comment? Thank you, ma'am. All right, looks like we do have a few people for public comments. As always, we would ask you to make your comments as comments, not as questions addressed to either the Planning Commission or the applicant. Just address this as comments or statements. And if you would also, please try to stay within maybe a 3-minute time period so that everybody gets a chance. Okay, and saying that, is there any public comment? Identify yourself and, okay, they didn't bring me my timers.
Michael Elias, and I did have something I needed clarification on because I wasn't sure about there was 50 dogs, but I wasn't sure how long those 50 dogs were going to be staying in the kennel. I know you said a question, but I don't know that answer. Do they stay there for 2 weeks? Are they there for 6 months? I mean, at one time I saw in the minutes that the number was 1,000 dogs for the year. I don't know if that was the whole state or, are there 1,000 dogs going to be going through the facility per year, more or less, or what is that? That was important for me to know. And the other thing was, my stance hasn't changed. I'm not going to rehash all that, but I still feel the same way about from what I said in the past meetings. But that I wanted clarification on if I could get that. I don't have that answer.
Okay, thank you. Well, ordinarily, okay, I guess we can be that informal.
1,000 dogs get adopted from our organization in a year. We don't have 1,000 at any given time. So we have a lot of dogs in foster homes. So that's how many come into Hart and get adopted. Many of them never make it to the kennel, would never make it to the kennel. They go straight to foster homes. Sometimes they get adopted the same day they come in. And then we've had a dog with us for 6 months. They wouldn't be at the facility. They would probably after they're with us for a little while, we try hard to find a foster home for them. So there will be no more than 50 at a time. They'll be coming and going, but the maximum will be 50.
Thank you.
So you did $1,000 last year.
I think we did more. We worked our butts off
I
this
think
past
so
year.
too.
We did,
From what I read.
we worked our, yeah. And this lady over here, every time I turn around, she's bringing more in, but we're finding them homes, so.
Okay, other public comment? Well,
I'm online, can you hear me?
I guess since nobody else wants to speak, we'll give you.
Wait.
Somebody's online, okay. Do we have somebody
It's
online?
Mike again.
Yeah.
We've got somebody online. Just hold a second. No, just,
This is Tommy Carney. Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, I own Rare Air Farm, and I am the closest resident to the new facility. A couple points of clarification. The original SUP was for 10,000 square feet or less. The size of that building was 60 feet by 144. The new design, which includes the interior courtyard, is now 92 by 173. Using my calculator, I come out to 15,916 square feet. You can check those measurements on the diagram. You can argue that the courtyard is not part of the facility, but if you look at the total dimension, the length times the width, that is a 15,916 square feet, building significantly larger than 10,000 square feet. Okay, then number two. The complicated report from DLI that lists numerous solutions to mitigate noise is irrelevant. Because Hart is only going to do what they can afford, which is what Patricia just said, which means she's not guaranteeing that they will do one thing in that report. And that report says if all those things are done, the noise level of a dog barking would go down. That's only if all those things are done. That's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you. All right. Did anyone else want to have public comment, or I guess we've got time? Again, 3 minutes maybe.
Yeah, one of the things was mentioned, looking in the future, the cats. If there's a need for more cats, then you apply for more. I mean, do you have plans for another kennel this size on the property somewhere if you need more dogs? Is that something in the future? I think those things, I mean, this is for now, but what about in 10 years? Or 5, or even next year? And how's it going to affect while these things are being built, how's it going to affect the neighborhood as well? I mean, the road is just a dirt road there. So there's a lot of things that I'm concerned about that I brought up before, but I think it's important to think about all those things before we authorize something, is to think about the best and worst case scenarios before we make decisions on these things. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this case? Okay, thank you. All right, our second case. And this one is scheduled for the joint meeting on Wednesday, April the 3rd. So I think this is our first review on this one. All right, case number SP-04-24-02. The applicant, Madison Holdings LLC, Mr. Powell O'Bannon, has submitted a site plan application to develop 7 mini-storage buildings or structures on a 6-acre M1 limited industrial zone portion of a 39-acre lot. Each mini-story building or structure would measure 180 feet by 65 feet, and the total number of individual mini-storage units would not exceed 400 units. In August of 2021, the subject 6-acre portion of the 39-acre split-zoned lot was rezoned from R1 limited residential to M1 limited industrial with conditions by Madison County's Board of Supervisors. The applicant has submitted an erosion/sediment control plan and stormwater management plan to the Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation District and Virginia Department of Environmental Equality, respectively. These plans are currently under review and pending approval. The subject lot does not contain a postal address, but is located on Fishback Road, Route 722, roughly 950 feet from Fishback Road's intersection with North Seminole Trail, US 29. The lot is identified on Madison County's tax maps as 40-20. Ligon, anything to add there?
Here are the original rezoning of this property. And if you look at the property, let me find there is the property. You remember that we rezoned it several years ago, and this is what the area we're talking about here, 6 acres. This was for the potential apartments. This is just a commercial, undetermined commercial area, as this is here. So, Mr. O'Bannon has owned this land, as I heard, 50 years today. So he's been sitting on it for a while. He's waiting for a return on investment. So, anyway, we went through the proffers, and if you had a chance to look at it, just to refresh yourself, remember what was approved and what conditions. This was the proffer on this one. I think we had talked about maybe there being an office or bathroom there, but he's decided that not going to do that, and that's totally allowable. Don't have to have that. The only thing in the site plan, and as I said in the ad, we have sent the applicant has had this engineered, and right now the erosion sediment and the ENS and the stormwater plan. ENS is at the Soil and Water District, that's what I'm trying to say. And the stormwater is at DEQ now, pending approval. The only issue that I really see, I think I had said that looking at the ordinance, it looks like that from the property line for what's zoned M1, you need to be 60 feet. And, looking at this, looking at the scale, I don't think there's any question it's 60 feet, well within 60 feet from the property lines of the industrial zoning. The only other thing is working out just a basic agreement. You see what I sent to VDOT as far as the entrance. I feel like they're going to say it needs to be commercial width. It's good sight distance there. Is just working out maybe an agreement if applicant wants to maybe pave the first 50 feet and the rest will be gravel. And then, once this is built out, if it goes to the next phase, the next portion of the lot, let's just say, right here, the apartments, they're just working a simple agreement that this gravelled road to Fishback will then be upgraded and paved. And I think that's what the plan was all along. So just maybe get that in writing before next month, something pretty straightforward. So outside of that, the hard part's been done, the engineering, we have those plans, they're submitted to the review agencies. everything in my perspective looks good. Just a few little small details to work out.
Okay, any questions for Ligon or any comments on this?
Yeah, Ligon, does the road that, the one schematic shows that the road's coming in to the storage units. Looking at the Exhibit A, where's that road come in? Is that coming in alongside of B and C? Or is that coming through D, which is R1 area? How's that road coming in to?
It's coming down the side.
I'm looking at this one here, so is it coming down, so it's coming down through the R1 area, which is the side of it? So it'll actually be in the B and the C area?
It's going to come right here, kind of straddle right here, coming down that way where the mouse is. Is that where it is? Mhm.
It's gonna come right down that line there.
Any other questions or comments on this? Just out of curiosity, how close is this entrance to is the proposed entrance to the, I know there's a house there on that corner that I believe you all have also purchased. And then there's further down the road, there's the road that goes to the wastewater treatment plant, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this is in between the house and the sewer plant.
Uh-huh, okay.
It was an interest. We donated land to upgrade that road
Uh-huh.
a few years, probably 30 years ago. I don't know how long it's been. And they, with the entrance, that was the entrances. That's one of them that we're using that was proposed that they agreed to at that time. The highway department.
There was three of those, wasn't it?
Pardon?
Three of those that they chose in different spots.
Three industrial entrances is what they commercial. Now, obviously, I've got to do it now. That's been 30 years. I've got to redo the entrances and put the pavement down and back 50 feet and stuff like that.
But basically, this is an existing entrance that's been there for close to 50 years, or at least 30 years.
Yeah.
And what you need to do is bring it up to
Well, I got it.
standard. Yeah. Is the proposed road paved or gravel right now?
It's going to be gravel until we do the next phase. When we do the apartments, it will be paved right now.
Okay, so potentially you could, if I understand, you're going to be building out the storage units
I'm gonna build the
separately.
storage units first, and of course, then it's a question on when I'm gonna be able to build the apartments because
Right.
of the sewer plant
Right.
situation. That's, my engineer's pushing me to go ahead and design these apartments, but I gotta be very careful. I've got 23
Uh-huh.
sewer taps. And, so, that doesn't work too well, to tell you the truth.
All right, the storage units themselves, are you planning on building those out all at once or over?
I'm gonna do them in phases, yes.
Yes, okay. Can you give us an idea of what that would look like?
I'm gonna do the first two,
Uh-huh,
and then I'll do the next two, and then I'll probably do the third, last three.
okay.
There's 7 units starting.
Yep.
7 built, 1, 2, 3,
Yep.
5, 6, 7.
Can you give us an idea of what time period we're talking about?
Well, if you give me a time period when it's approved,
I understand, okay.
I'm
There-
ready to go.
There is
You know,
DEQ involved,
I'm
okay,
ready to
yeah.
go. Once
Any other
I'm
question?
almost 80 years old, so I gotta be ready.
Pretty
I'm gonna be 80 in June, so I'm ready to go.
All right. Any other question for the applicant or any other comment? Any other question or comment on this? Okay.
So I was just curious, this one particular diagram is showing some dotted lines, and I was just wondering what the dotted lines were showing, that particular one, correct. What is that indicating?
I believe this is the, yeah, probably one of the drainage areas or something like that.
It's draining.
I think you might
I
see.
believe
How it's
that. I'm
draining?
not an engineer, so-
Hydraulic analysis, this is all part of the drainage
The
design.
dark dotted
The
line?
dark dotted line, is that the portion of land that we rezoned, showing the
No,
whole
no, this
piece?
is a hydraulic. You see back here, you see the, I think there's some kind of stormwater pond here, and I think the contours, I think this is showing that everything is gonna drain by the contours down to this pond. I mean, it says hydraulic, so this is something that DEQ, I mean, we get the whole submittal. Really, I
That's
think.
something DEQ
Required, right.
wanted. I don't-
Yeah.
I'm a builder, I'm not an engineer, so I
Yeah.
can't do that.
Since Mike brought it up, what are they're not crosshatched, they're just a sequence of lines here on the edge of the road, it looks like.
Right here?
Yeah, those,
I'm pretty sure those are contours. Those are given elevations if you look down at it real close.
okay, but the gray area on each side of the road, for example, is that, I see the contours on the road, I think, but.
All those contours are so DDQ can figure out which direction all the water's going and how much volume of flow they're gonna have.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't think that's what those dotted lines are right there, but.
Right here?
Yeah, what
Yeah,
I'm
the-
asking about is on each side of the entrance road there. I mean, and I see your elevation lines there, but there are it's like, it would be gray area if it was crosshatched, but it's not crosshatched, it's just a series of horizontal lines. But they don't look like they're elevation lines. Your elevation lines are typically the dotted lines there, or the dashes rather.
Right
I'm
here?
just curious what they are.
Here?
Yeah, they're on each side of the driveway. They
Oh, yeah, those are-
surround
those
the,
I'm pretty sure that's elevation.
yeah, well, okay, in that case, why did they switch from the dash lines to solid lines? There has to be some significance for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, I mean, it's interesting to kind of, but this is right here is what, who's what they're doing, I have to get them on the phone, but this is all to meet the stormwater regs. I mean, honestly, I think from our review, just understanding the locations, setbacks,
The pieces in the dark dotted line, that piece of land right there drains toward the other piece.
Uh-huh.
The DDQ has to calculate how much water will come off of that piece going on to the other piece.
I think that's right on.
At this scale, it's difficult, there's no legend that explains what they are that I can see.
Well,
I
I didn't
just-
include the full-blown
Yeah,
plans.
okay.
They're right here. I mean, it goes into notes, and you have a lot more, but this is a really large, this is a large document, so I wasn't able to send it. But, I mean, this,
What is the zoning of the triangle to the south of where the storage units are going to be?
everything is, this is a sewer plant right there.
I mean, the rest of the triangle of
Right here?
this plat, no, 4020, up above that.
So this is R1.
Okay.
Yeah. Most of that surrounding land is R1, right?
Now, how do you
That's-
get to it? Through the storage units?
Yeah, so the entrance would be somewhere right in here.
Right down to.
Okay. If I remember correctly, you said you were going to be leaving a tree buffer between this facility and 29 there, so it's not really visible from 29, okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you, sir. Any public comment on this case? Any public comment? Yes, sir. Okay.
I was just raised, I know we had our agenda review meeting, and there was maybe some, thank you. I know during our agenda review meeting, there was conversation of, we understood that this would be gravel coming all the way in. Was there any concerns? I know there was some dialogue about maybe requiring or requesting some payment, whether it's like a 50-foot section of the entrance and not the rest of the way.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have to do that because you put a commercial entrance in, you gotta go back 50. It's gotta
So
be
it would
paid
be
back
at least a
50.
minimum
Oh,
of
yeah.
50.
It's
Yeah,
gotta be
we'll be sure to
Oh,
put that
okay.
in the
That's gotta be-
understanding.
It's gotta be paid, that's commercial.
Yeah.
Okay, so the VDOT already requires pavement
That's-
50 feet back, okay, okay. Any other question or comment, well, not question, but any other comment from the public? Okay, thank you, sir. All right, with our slightly amended agenda, Mike, would you like to give us a little rundown on what you're doing with the Business, Industrial, and Sign Committee on the boundary line adjustment question?
Well, we looked at a lot of things particularly from a lot of the counties in the area. And trying to make a short and sweet definition is what you have in front of you. And I've got a couple things down at the bottom of different ways to change some wording if we wanted to, things under things to consider. I can read this, or we can read it to ourselves, or however you want to do it. And I did consult with Hannon about this, and we looked at all this, and I changed a couple of things from what we talked about, and I think I'd say consistent with what we talked about. Open for review of anybody that wants to read it and tell me, do they have another way that they'd like to say this?
Yeah, I know I had brought up this question about property line adjustment. I was forced to go back. I don't know if Hannon already gave you this, but here's a copy of the Virginia Code that is enabling legislation for it. And they do call it a boundary line adjustment. So I guess we don't have to worry about that wording.
Well, the discussion was that, that boundary was basically used for municipal and county.
Yeah, and it turns out, it looks to me like they've got two separate enabling pieces that do, one for the boundary for the town and one for the property lines. And they don't seem to make any, that's one of the problems that we've had, is the code doesn't have much guidance on what this is.
If you were to rename it property, I looked up at the definition of property, and it was any tract, lot, or parcel, or several of the same collected together for the purpose of subdividing, which I think discounts this, because not all these are going to be for the purpose of subdividing, preparing a site development or plan or developing it. So I think that last part of that definition kind of kicks that out, because not any, and the other one was for a lot. And the definition for lot, a parcel of land occupied by a main structure or a group of main structures. That in itself right there is not really what we're trying to identify as what we want to do with maybe a piece of vacant property.
Right, right.
So the boundary line seems to be what I thought might be the best way to keep this.
Yeah, that seems to be the common terminology for it. And believe it or not, I actually did manage to find what I was talking to you about earlier, about where it is mentioned in the existing ordinance.
So,
2-38.
so I guess the question, Hannon, is what we have put together here meets the state code?
Well, in what sense? Sorry.
In the sense of what we're trying to accomplish and how things are recorded and looked at, whatever, to try to solve our problem. We're not putting anything in here that, we've talked about this a lot, that's not gonna be under the state code, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, I saw this yesterday. I'd like to probably some more time before I
Okay.
answer that one, but I think preliminarily and looking at some of the other jurisdictions and what they're doing, there's not an issue conceptually with what we're doing. I think, and I know we're talking about what happens at the clerk's office too and how we can impact that, so I guess there'll be a couple of things I just need to pull the thread on to
Okay.
make sure.
And I'll just throw in a couple, I mean, since this is my last meeting. I've probably done, I don't know, maybe 50 boundary line adjustments. The nice thing about it is it's fairly easy to review. I know that, people thought the one, I guess, with the Jenkins one was unusual. It really, I tend to disagree that it's really not that unusual. I think one of the nice things people could just bring to the office, it's pretty easy to review. They can send them in and out in literally in a few minutes, fill the application out. I would not make it go to the Plan Commission because that was, when I started, that was sort of one of the, one of the requests was to sort of streamline the processes. Nothing has been done, boundary line adjustment, that has messed anything up or created situations or hardship. So I don't really see it as a problem. I mean, welcome to do what you want. But I defining it, that's fine, but I wouldn't make, it more bureaucratic when it's really 99.9% time. It's a pretty simple process, and people appreciate that. They can come in. If you got to take it to the Plan Commission, then I think it just, some things just need to be, I think, should be administrative. I'll have a few other comments about, they kind of relate to that, but I can wait for a minute for that. That's, y'all keep talking about this. That's just my humble opinion.
Well, our thought was here when we met, Ligon, what we was trying to do, it's like people can do a boundary adjustment and, they bring it into you and they've done the boundary adjustment, but if nobody, whoever's gonna sign off on this, and I'm not saying the planning commission, that's the board's decision, how they wanna handle it or what they wanna do. But if nobody is going to the courthouse and looking to see what these things are, how do we know what these people are doing is right? I mean, it's like a deed of dedication. I know where there's property at, that the deed of dedication says you can't change the boundary line, but it's been done.
Yeah.
And that's the concerns that we have, or people using a boundary adjustment to create lots.
No, I mean, if someone, the code says you have to get a stamp approved from the county. If you to go record something that hasn't been reviewed by the county, then it's possible somewhere down the line, I don't know, a title company or someone say, hey, look, where's the stamp at? So, and usually the clerk will not accept, unless, but, I mean, it's possible something could get through, but I guess I kind of go back to my general thought is I really, I don't, I mean, we might get, I don't know, course of a year, might get 10 boundary line adjustments, and most of those are pretty straightforward. In the situation with Jenkins, I just think he made the whole situation better out there. If that was one you consider an extreme example of, hey, what's going on, sort of, I thought he made it a better situation. So, defining it is no problem, but, you might go to 5 different counties and find 5 different set of rules, or none, so.
Well, the Jenkins thing, there's a couple things in this particular thing here that the Jenkins was brought up several times. And one particular was, when that was first brought up, was that when we talked about, if I remember right, originally that was taking a non-conforming lot and keeping it non-conforming. And this addresses that, and I'm not too sure if that's what I have down here under things to consider.
yeah.
If we want to keep it that way, if we want to keep it to where if you do this, are you going to be able to keep a non-conforming lot, but not make it any smaller? I mean, this is up for discussion.
Yeah,
All this is up
the
for
general sort of
discussion.
rule is.
This is a starting point.
If you're improving it, you know, you don't, you don't have to bring it up to, you know, to conform, but if taking non-conforming and then expanding it, then, you know, that would be okay. So-
Well, some of the thought was if you're gonna change it at all, it's got to remain, you have got to change it to conforming.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
not leave it
and that's,
non-conforming in any
and that's
part.
an okay policy. I just think it's a little punitive if someone's trying to make the situation better. That's all, that, you know.
And I'd be interested to hear anything from the board members of what they think, and give me some feedback if they would like to, or give us, sorry.
Let's rate it, think about it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, another point that I think probably is pretty important is specifically stating the procedures and the fact that it must be recorded following approval by the Board of Supervisors or its designee.
That's where we gotta get buy-in from clerk.
And I
Well, no.
did talk to Lita today about that.
Yeah,
And she was very much in favor of this, this last part. She was very appreciative that she would have a little bit of extra help from the board that gives her more authority not to just record anything.
yeah, and
She liked, I read this to her, and she liked it, particularly the part where it was gonna have to go through some kind of a stage to where it was handed to her, and now you can record it.
if I'm reading it correctly, the Virginia code that enables us to do this does specify some things about recording the change, boundary adjustment. It has to be recorded.
And she also said that the minimum time frame for that, for it being recorded is 60 days.
Yeah. So there are some guidelines on recording it, I think.
Yeah. I think there's a maximum of 180. I think it's between 60 and 180. And she felt like that the longer time that somebody had on that, the more it sits around. She was in agreement to the 60 days or 2 months.
Yeah. But I think probably your last sentence under zoning ordinance, that's pretty important.
Yeah, I can tell you, just from talking to the clerk and talking to Lita and then talking to Parks and Beers, the clerk in Culpeper, is that they regularly cite a similar provision sentence that they've got in their ordinance. I mean, there are limits to what a clerk can refuse in terms of recording, but it can also be super helpful, to your point, if they could point to this and say, look, this has got to get approved
Yep.
before you come in here.
Yeah, our current zone, you can only do BLAs in C and A1. And there is a 10-year toll that starts once you do one. You can't do another change. But what we're having now is people will do a BLA, go and register it, then come in forthwith for a subdivision. And it's not allowed under the code, but it's been done a lot. And from the standpoint of whether or not we should be conforming after a BLA, I think we should. And the reason is the Code of Virginia does not require localities to have zoning ordinances. All but 4 do, but they don't require it. And notwithstanding the fact the origin of ours was all from, I think, Fauquier. And it was just lifted wholesale, and Fauquier was actually cited in our ordinances early on, in our zoning ordinance. But the goal of the zoning ordinance was to produce uniformity. And if we're going to produce uniformity, they recognize that all lots were not uniform at the time. But the mere fact that they chose to have a zoning ordinance suggests that if you're going to change it for these non-conforming lots, then it should be changed to conform. And the zoning and conforming and non-conforming, it deals not only with lot size, but also with use. So if you have a property that's non-conforming in both size and use, and it's grandfathered, and you continue it and continue operating the non-conforming use, then you're okay. But if you abandon the non-conforming use, then you can't go back to it.
So, I guess a question I have, let's say somebody comes in, wants to do a boundary line adjustment, and it's gonna still be a non-conforming lot, but let's say it's bigger, right? It's gonna go from 2 acres to 2.5 acres. And I'm not advocating for position, this is for discussion, is two things. One is, should there be any sort of wiggle room to allow for an exception if certain hardships are in place? Or if it's, somebody comes in for boundary line adjustment, I should know the answer to this, but I don't, and it's denied, is that something that they can go to the BZA over?
I think they can.
Yeah, okay.
It could. It's administrative. And of course, the surveyors know, I mean, they know the regs and are up on those things too, so they don't want to bring a survey in that doesn't meet, and not get it recorded. I mean,
Of course, one of the other things that's in here that we talked about was the time before another BLA can be done again. Just threw it in there as 1 year and obviously up for discussion, whatever the board wants. If they want to keep it at, because right now it's at 10 years.
Yeah.
So keep it at 10 years or make it 1 year. And my personal thoughts on this is that you're not creating a lot. You're simply changing a boundary line. And if somebody wants to, now if you're creating something out of that, you got to go through the 4 and 10. But if you're just, my thoughts are, once again, if you are just moving a boundary line, that if you want to do it again next year, you can do it again next year. Or 2 years, or, I mean, that's just my thought, but.
Well, the reason that was originally put there back in Bob Miller days, they did that to try to slow up the breaking up of land and the growth. And that was the reason that was put there. But that number, again, is up to the board, what they would like to do with that.
You talking about the 4 and 10?
Not the 4 and 10 years to do a boundary
The time
adjustment.
period, yeah.
You do a boundary adjustment, you have to wait 10 years to do the next one.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, helpful suggestions? I think, well, I see two things. There's a couple of things in your suggestion for the zoning ordinance itself that are pretty important, especially the recording of it and the process for recording. If I remember correctly, we do not have a definition in our definitions for the boundary line adjustment. So just putting that in would help. And I think, I like you've got a nice, concise, clear definition. I think that's a good start for that. Okay, one of the points, if I remember, you were, one of your examples, you were showing some of the surrounding counties have checklists for this. We have any comments about that idea?
I've got a copy of it here if anybody wants to look at it.
I got copies of about 6.
Yeah.
And one that I've started doing for us, but we need to have references of, or citable code provisions, so you know why you're requiring that.
Yeah.
And some of them require surveyors, even for a BLA, and if we're gonna do a BLA, we should probably do a lot consolidation as well. So if you've got 2 non-conformings that you can consolidate, and that's a,
Yeah, that's
that's a different,
It was written in here, right?
Yeah.
That's written in here, but I don't know if we need to go, you
we need
think
to
we need to
define
go
it.
beyond
It's not
that too?
defined.
I'm sorry?
It's not defined in our ordinance, so it probably be defined.
Yeah, it is mentioned, I think, in the Virginia code, in the same section. It talks about the property line vacating a property line or boundary line. Which brought up another question. If you do that, you eliminate tax map parcel if you vacate a property line like that. So do we want to have that? I think, Pete, you pointed that out. Yeah.
Well, I don't think that matters too much, because even if you do, Brian's still gonna charge you the same amount of property, and you're gonna get the same money. And it's easier for him probably in his office to have one big piece rather than 2 or 3 little pieces. So I don't think losing a tax map like that makes any difference.
Okay, so if you've got 45A and 45B and 45B disappears, it doesn't, has no real effect on anything. Yeah. So including the vacating a property line as part of the boundary line adjustment is non-issue then, basically, I guess. Okay. I think that was the last thing I can remember that you all were talking about. Any other helpful suggestions for Mike and his committee? All right. Do we have anything else that we need to discuss then?
I'll just take a few comments,
Yes, sir.
since this is my swan song here in Madison. One thing, just something to consider, I mentioned it to Jonathan, and I'll write something up, and just maybe you might consider breaking the joint meetings, doing a separate planning commission meeting and doing a board of supervisors meeting the next month. And my thoughts were, and again, I'll put it on paper, was say if y'all met the first Wednesday, had your agenda, whatever was approved or whatever was on the agenda was a public hearing, would then go, if it was January, February, at the board's regular, whatever that 6 o'clock meeting is, and then they could pick up that agenda. I also thought that maybe, you do your special use permits and your rezonings would go to the board at their next meeting. But maybe the things like site plans and subdivisions could just simply stay at the plan commission. And if they approve it, then it's approved. Then staff can move on. I know some counties that do it that way. Actually, several do. So you wouldn't just be sending everything like tonight, you would just be sending the heart through, Mr. O'Bannon's, once he got approval, would be approved, and then the staff can issue permits and all that. So just something to think about. We do get a lot of criticism about, and I've talked to other colleagues, and they said, we are always criticized that people didn't know about the hearing. So, but I think sometimes that joint hearing sneaks up on people, because, you don't send it to a few weeks before. So that's just a thought. And also, the board meets 3 times. That's actually quite a bit for a board. So that would take away one meeting, and one of those meetings could be the public hearings. So I'll write something, just, use it as you want. Last thing is, been here for almost 5 years, and we've been through a lot together. A lot of good memories. I still remember the 3 o'clock in the morning Crescent Ray. We had a couple of midnight runs here. Y'all have all done a good job, and I've enjoyed each one of you. Maybe haven't agreed on everything, but that's what it's all about. It's just trying to figure things out. And I think y'all all done admirably your job, and I appreciate it. Clay and Cardi, really have enjoyed y'all. And I know other supervisors and like them, but you two are really dedicated, and I've always enjoyed working with you. And, probably worked with well over 100 public officials, and I'd put you on my all-star team all day long, both of you. So I really have enjoyed the last few years. So it's been a great run. I'm going down to back to Central Virginia, where I grew up. I've been in the Valley for 20 years. I came in 2004, and I'm going to start in a few weeks in Powhatan County as their planning director of planning. A little larger community, kind of similar in some ways to Madison. There are some similarities. So I'll be back in Central Virginia, probably be for a year. I'll be kind of a vagabond, going back and forth and staying here and staying there until everyone's out of high school. So life's changing, and looking forward to my new position. But I've built a lot of good friendships here in Madison, people I just couldn't imagine not knowing, and I've appreciated the opportunity, and have nothing but love for Madison County from here on out. I'll always have positive feelings when I drive through Madison and stop by and see some of my friends. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank
Thank you. Okay. If there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved, seconded? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Hey, man. Good working with you. You did.